Hello, today we have a presentation by James McFarlane of Cantabria Labs. He will be talking about a new article by key opinion leaders from across the globe. The article is titled Expert Recommendations on the Evaluation of Sunscreen Efficacy and the Beneficial Role of Non-Filtering Ingredients. So we're looking at sunscreen recommendations past the SPF factor on the label, especially for those who are under dermatological care due to sun-induced pathologies.
It is an article where we have brought together an international group of key opinion leaders. We have had them discuss how to evaluate the efficacy of topical sunscreen. What are the key parameters that must be taken into consideration by the dermatologist in deciding which sunscreen to choose for his or her patient. So very important because they are international key opinion leaders. They're looking at evaluating sunscreen efficacy, and they have made a number of expert recommendations. So to sum it all up, before we go and look at it in a little bit more detail, what does the article say? The doctors say that SPF, UVA, PF, and critical wavelength, so UVB and UVA protection are not sufficient to accurately determine photoprotection activity. You know, we've been saying this for a long time. One thing is when I say it, or when Cantabria Labs say it, or when you say it. Another is when a group of leading key opinion leaders say it. So they're saying, careful, it's not enough to just look at UVA and UVB protection when we're looking for good photoprotection efficacy. We need to look at parameters such as prevention of DNA damage, immunosuppression, photoaging, and hyperpigmentation. These must also be taken into consideration. And of course, these are not always related to UVA or UVB protection or the quantity of UVA or UVB exposure. And that in addition to organic and inorganic filters, so chemical and mineral filters, biological filters or non-filtering biological molecules can help protect against these additional types of damage. Okay, so UVA, UVB is not enough. We need also to prevent other kinds of damage. And to do this, we can be helped by biological molecules, such as antioxidants, DNA repair enzymes, and of course, FernBlock. Okay, so you see, very powerful support to what we have been saying and promoting with our Heliocare, that we go much beyond the UVA and UVB to protect against many other important factors. And this can be done with the addition of FernBlock to our topical sunscreens. So, in spite, when we convened the meeting, there was concern that despite increased awareness and sales of sunscreen worldwide, you know, we see the market data, sunscreen use is growing, sales are growing, but at the same time, the cases of skin cancer continue to grow worldwide. So something wrong is happening. More people using sunscreen, but still cases of skin cancer growing worldwide. A group of international experts in dermatology and photobiology met to discuss how current evaluation and communication of sunscreen efficacy could be improved in order to better allow physicians to identify and recommend optimal photoprotection measures to patients. Okay, so here again, the focus is on the doctor who must choose the correct product for his or her patient. And this is to assist the doctor in making that choice. So again, from doctors to doctors, sponsored by Cantabria Labs. Okay. If we look at the group of participating physicians, a number of names will be familiar with you. Of course, Dr. Salvador Gonzalez, Then we have Dr. Jose Aguilera. He was involved in the studies we did on the immune protection factor, where we demonstrated that Fernblock was able to increase the immune protection factor of topical sunscreen. He involved as well in the work we did in demonstrating that Fernblock can help protect against damage from blue light. Okay, so he's done quite a bit of work for us in the past. Brian Behrman, who works at the University of Miami in Florida, who has done a lot of work with Fernblock, particularly with respect to skin aging. Dr. Calzavara Pinton from Italy, a leading figure in European photoprotection. He's done work again with Fernblock, particularly in photodermatosis. Yolanda Gilaberte, she is currently president of the Spanish Academy of Dermatology and Venerology. This gentleman here, you all know very well, Professor Go, who has been a great support to us over the years in helping to communicate Fernblock. He was involved in this board. You know Henry Lim as well, perhaps the leading international expert in photobiology. Detroit, as you know, he's done a lot of very good work on particularly evaluating the oral efficacy of Fernblock against UVB, UVA, and visible light. Sergio Schalke from Brazil, who demonstrated the additional benefit of including Fernblock in topical sunscreen. Dr. Fernando Stengel in Buenos Aires, Dr. Peter Wolf in Austria, and then some of you may be familiar with Dr. Flora Shang, who is working in Shanghai. She is also the doctor who is doing our study on SCA40 post-procedure. So as you see, a lot of big international names in sun protection. And what do they say? Well, they say that photoprotection efficacy is currently evaluated and communicated by SPF, and to a lesser extent, UVA, PF, and critical wavelength. We know that consumers walking into a pharmacy or a drugstore, they base their choice mostly by looking at the SPF. They want an SPF of 30, they want an SPF of 50, they want an SPF of 50 plus. They look for a guarantee about UVA protection as well. So that's how patients, but also doctors, currently evaluate sunscreen efficacy. But these measures do not adequately cover all damage induced by light exposure, nor all wavelengths responsible for damage. SPF is UVB, UVA, PF, or critical wavelength is obviously UVA, but there is no level for the visible light. Sorry. Sorry, just a distraction here for a moment. In addition, this is very interesting, a growing body of evidence indicates that sub-med doses of UV radiation can create damage. Okay, so we're used to thinking of SPF. It is when the skin begins to turn red, when we begin to get erythema. But what they're discovering is that there is skin damage occurring even before we get to that level. Okay, even before we begin to detect inflammation, erythema, there has already been damage to the skin, such as photoaging, immunosuppression, and DAN damage. That means that the SPF or the MED method is not going to be helpful against these kinds of damage. This group of doctors conclude that the evaluation of sunscreen efficacy should thus take into consideration other parameters such as protection against DNA damage, immunosuppression, hyperpigmentation, and photoaging, and the contribution of non-filtering ingredients can have an important part in improving performance. Okay, so again, things we've been saying for years, but now it's been said by a group of international key opinion leaders. With respect to DNA damage, we know that the UV damage to DNA has been well documented. we have the creation of CPDs, both during exposure and after exposure, the dark CPDs that we've spoken about recently, and the oxidative damage through 8-oxy-D1A. Okay, if this is not repaired or eliminated, it can cause DNA mutations and photoinduced carcinogenesis. The main radiation responsible is UVB, but UVA and visible light can also contribute to damage and reduced repair and elimination through the generation of ROS. So the generation of reactive oxygen species or free radicals is not a parameter taken into consideration when we talk about SPF or UVA protection. A significant quantity of reactive oxygen species can in fact be generated even in the presence of high SPF and UVA filter protection. Okay, so even if we have high SPF, high UVA, we can still have a large production of free radicals. If we look at immunosuppression, again, UV radiation induces immunosuppression, decreasing the immune system ability to protect against pathogens, fungal, virus, and bacterial, and eliminate mutating cells. It has been well demonstrated that the ability of sunscreens to prevent immunosuppression is not related only to SPF, as UVA is also a potent immunosuppressor. So again, SPF is not going to be a good reference point for determining protection against immunosuppression. Immunoprotection actives can improve photoprotection efficacy. Okay, and we've shown that already through 2 publications, the Sergio Schalke one and the one with Jose Aguilera. Okay. We look at visible light. Remember, SPF or UVA protection doesn't talk about protection against visible light. Pigmentation is induced by UV radiation, but also visible light. In fact, in darker skin types, visible light induces more durable pigmentation than UVA. Okay, so again, in darker skin types, especially, of course, in a number of darker Asian skin types, visible light is more responsible for hyperpigmentation than UVA. And as we know, while non-nanophysical filters, the large physical filter or mineral particles may help block visible light, they are unappealing from a cosmetic standpoint. They are greasy, they are hard to spread. They can leave whiteness on the face. Different filters are needed or additional ingredients that disguise whitening or specifically target and prevent visible light induced damage. Okay, so these are all the things that these doctors are talking about in the article. The need to protect against DNA damage, the need to protect against immunosuppression, the need to protect against hyperpigmentation from visible light, and also, of course, skin aging, most of which is caused by oxidative stress, again, not measured by SPF or UVA. Here we know the visible light and chronic exposure to infrared are also involved in inducing skin aging. So what do the doctors say? They say accepting SPF as a reliable indicator for sun protection efficacy is risky, as it does not contemplate all DNA damage, photoprotection, and immunosuppression effects of skin exposure. Okay, so they recommend that the medical community move beyond just looking at the SPF and the UVA, that they take additional protection parameters into consideration. They also say that the current mineral and chemical filters do provide significant protection against damage, but recent studies have shown that additional protection can be achieved by adding other ingredients to sunscreen formulations. This is particularly important for patients suffering from chronic skin diseases and sun-related conditions under dermatologist care. So they're saying filters are fine, they do a good job, but if you have extra ingredients in the formulations, then they can be particularly suited for patients with sun-related skin conditions under dermatological care. They talk about biological filters or non-filtering modulating biological molecules that carry out additional biological effects. And here they talk about antioxidants, the DNA repair enzymes, so the photolase, the endonuclease, and the glycosylase. As you know, in our AK, we have all three of them together in one or two products in our pediatric lines. Otherwise, we have usually glycosylase DNA repair enzymes, and they specifically mention FernBlock, a standardized extract of Polypodium leucotomus, where they discuss significant scientific evidence regarding topical and oral efficacy. It increases the MED, DNA protection repair, immunoprotection, and reduces photoaging and pigmentary response. So amongst the conclusion, overwhelming scientific evidence supports the potential benefit of FernBlock's inclusion in commercial sunscreens and oral supplements. Okay, so very strong endorsement of FernBlock by these leading doctors. So what are the conclusions? Traditional SPF and UVA are not sufficient to provide a complete picture of photoprotection efficacy. Additional parameters must be taken into consideration, and these additional parameters can be targeted by additional ingredients in sun protection products, including FernBlock. So how can we use this article? As you've seen, it strongly supports our positioning with FernBlock and Heliocare. Here we have international key opinion leader confirmation of the need to move beyond simple UVA and UV filters to include other photoprotection agents to ensure protection against DNA damage, immunosuppression, photoaging, and hyperpigmentation. The pillars of FernBlock activity and positioning. It's a validation of the biological photoprotection agent concept, so that there are molecules that can provide biological photoprotection, and international key opinion leaders endorse the use of FernBlock to provide important.
Well, I hope you found that useful. As always, we'll pop the link to this article in the description below. And if you require any further information, you'll find our contact details there also. Bye for now.